A very good afternoon to you, and thank you very much for joining us. So, for somebody who has no idea of the Gukurahundi massacres that happened in the 80s in Zimbabwe, what are we talking about?
We are basically talking about the genocides that happened in Zimbabwe immediately after independence between 1982 and 1987, where over 20,000 Ndebele-speaking people were killed by the army, which was called the 5th Brigade, codenamed Gukurahundi. They were deployed in Ndebele on the pretext that they were fighting dissidents, and they killed a lot of people. Some people disappeared. Up to today, there are lots of families who don't know what happened to their relatives. And of late, while we were researching on this issue, we also discovered that lots and lots of women were raped, and they've really never talked about this issue. And we are learning more about what happened during that genocide that many people have not talked about.
Sure. And the documentary itself, titled The Bones Will Speak, what would you say the legacy of the Gukurahundi massacres is in that country? When you say that name, what kind of feeling does it invoke in Ndebele land?
The sad part about the Gukurahundi genocide is that for so many years, the government of Zimbabwe denied that the genocide happened. They prevented people from talking about it. Even up to today, when you mention Gukurahundi, people look at you. It's something that, it's like whispered in families, in private places. And it's only a few years ago, even the current president will tell you that you can talk about the 5th Brigade, you can now talk about what is happening, but it's not really something that you can openly debate and talk about. It's so a sensitive topic. So a lot of issues have not been talked about. And the title, The Bones Will Speak, we are actually saying, despite the fact that people were killed, despite the fact that people were thrown in mines alive, there is a story to tell, and we are going to talk to the families of those people who are alive, to those who died, to hear their stories. They are going to, using whether it's the shallow graves that are there or where they were buried, we are going to reconstruct their lives and at least tell the young kids what happened to them. And what is said about this issue is that we also found out that there are women who were raped. They had kids out of this rape, and these people are now in their late 30s, early 40s. These are people without any identity. These are people without surnames. And in our culture, we do mbuyiso, we talk to our ancestors. How do you talk to your ancestors when you don't know your surname?
The government, in an effort to sort of bring some sort of not even closure, but try and bridge the gap, has talked about exhumation of bodies and has tried to meet people in Ndebele land halfway. How has that been received there?
The problem is that the whole process has not been done in a genuine manner and in a transparent manner. The government set up the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission, which is supposed to be spearheading this process. But you then find that the government will try to interfere in the work of the NPRC. The NPRC sometimes is not well funded because it's supposed to be leading this whole process. So there's no need for government to come and say, we are going to be, doing this. And also what we need to remember is that the current president, who's Emmerson Mnangagwa, was the Minister of State Security during the genocide. So he's actually part of the perpetrators, and he cannot be part of the solution. The current Vice President, Chiwenga, was also part of the people who were in the army at that time. He was the brigade commander in Bulawayo who actually raided ZAPU properties, and they took most of the uniforms, the properties. ZAPU lost its properties then, which included ANC farms, Umkhonto Wesizwe farms, and some of Umkhonto Wesizwe comrades were actually killed during the Gukurahundi raids when ZANU or the army was raiding different hideouts for these guys. So the people who were perpetrators cannot be the peacemakers. The person who rapes you cannot come and say, now it's time for you to actually forgive me. It's up to the person who was wronged to actually, find it in themselves to forgive. So the whole process is not done in a proper manner.
The project, you say, is in search for peace and justice. Is there any hope that justice will be meted out for people who suffered during the Gukurahundi massacres?
I think at the moment we are really looking more at the restorative justice. that the person who lost a relative, at least they can get a birth certificate. Because there's someone, I mean, there are people, a generation who don't have birth certificates because their parents were killed during the Gukurahundi. They did not manage to get birth certificates, they did not manage to get death certificates. Those who were killed did not get their pensions. So we are looking at least at restorative justice, that at least restore the damage that you caused in the properties. Give these people their documents that they need. At least you should allow people to exhume their dead relatives and bury them properly. Some of these people are in shallow graves, some of them are in mass graves, some of them are in caves. And like I said, in our tradition, in our culture, we always try to bring back the spirit home. We always try to talk to our ancestors. How do you bring a spirit? How do you talk to a spirit in a mass grave? So you cannot even be allowed to put up a memorial stone to commemorate those who died. At least these are the things that the communities should be allowed to do, because as long as the current government is in power, I don't think there will be any justice, because the perpetrators cannot try themselves.
You say the project focuses on truth-telling in order for victims to get some sort of closure. Speaking to the people that you spoke to, what is it that they tell you will give them closure?
People want to talk about it. People want, for the last 36 or 38 years since the Gukurahundi genocide happened, people have not been allowed to mourn for their dead relatives. We are talking about people who, when they were killed, the relatives were told to dance. You were dancing while your relative was killed, and then after that, you were dancing while you were burying them. So you really never had time to mourn your relatives. So most of the people that we have talked to, all what they need is to be given space to mourn their dead relatives. It is to be given space and time and security to bury their relatives with dignity. And of course, they want government to compensate them at a community level. Matabeleland lost almost the first 7 years of independence, when other areas were getting schools, when other areas were getting hospitals, piped water. There was a genocide in Matabeleland, and there was no development. And because most of these people, then their fathers were killed, they did not go to school. So you then have a larger number of people from our area not being educated or not being able to go to school. We don't have proper schools. And government should have a program that compensates Matabeleland, because it is the one that makes sure that Matabeleland lags behind in terms of development. So there has to be compensation at community level.
You mentioned a bit earlier on that people want to speak during the elections in 2018. One got a sense that people are really afraid of coming out and telling their stories, especially in the rural areas of Ndebele land, because of the legacy of Robert Mugabe and his government at the time, instilling fear in people. So in terms of getting people to open up and to speak about their experiences, what was that like?
I find that there has been a slight improvement. I first did a documentary on Gukurahundi in 2006. And it was difficult to get people to talk. Right now, some people are opening up, they are talking about it, but you still have people saying to you, cover my face, I don't want to be known, or what will happen to me if I talk. So the majority of the people still are not comfortable talking about Gukurahundi. You're talking about even the people in the media sector. You're talking about even activists. People would actually be afraid to come to your launch because they think that something will happen when they attend your Gukurahundi launch. People are even afraid to retweet that you have a Gukurahundi festival that focuses on that. So fear is still there. Despite the assurance by the current administration that you can talk about it, people always say, but these guys, you never know what they will do, because there is this thing that you disappear. So when I talk to my relatives every time, they'll say, when you disappear.
When you will disappear. It's not funny, not by any stretch of the imagination, but it still shows you just how, how worried people are. Are you not worried?
I think there's a young person I experienced a lot during Gukurahundi. There is nothing as humiliating as seeing your parents or your mother, your father, your uncle being beaten up in front of you and not having any power to do anything. Because As a kid, you always believe that your parents are superhuman beings. They are the supermen. They can do anything. They'll protect you. But when someone takes that power from you, when they humiliate them in front of you, I don't think there's anything else that you can be afraid of. So I always tell people that for me, we died a long time ago. So there is nothing that will kill us than the way Gukurahundi dehumanized us. Our people were humiliated. We were made to believe that we are not human beings, we are second-class citizens, we don't matter. Therefore, there is nothing that matters anymore. And I don't think the life matters. Our lives were killed a long time ago. We are just walking zombies. Our humanity was taken by the 50th Brigade. So there is really nothing to worry about.
Zenzele Ndebele Magukanye in search for peace, justice and reconciliation for victims and survivors of the Gukurahundi massacre. Journalist and director for the Center of Innovation and Technology, Zenzele Ndebele, on that film festival.